Okay. Thanks for the tea. We're addicted. We're all three of us are drinking it every day,
That's awesome.
and we've had some good results.
Perfect. Well, Alex, we can talk about it and give away a free chapter 14, which is Healing Leaves from the book, if you want to offer that.
Yeah,
Teach people how to make it. I just can't send it to everybody. That's all.
sure. That's fine. Okay. So how do we do that? How do we give
But
it
if
to
they go to the bibliodiet.com, there's a link to download chapter 14 and they can pre-order the book.
bibliohealing.com?
The bibliodiet.com. Yeah, the Biblio Diet.
Bibliodiet.com.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, got it. And I know who your publisher is because it's mine.
Your former publisher, right? Didn't you divorce him, Alex?
I did, but I still get royalties.
Well, yeah, because they have the healing codes.
Yeah, right. And you've got a shirt already.
No, this is my Beyond Organic shirt,
Oh,
but it
okay.
is the same color. Yes.
Okay. So Laura, we're live, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to start. If people aren't here, Jordan, we're recording it and we'll send it out to everybody. A lot of people don't even come because they know that. All right, I'm Alex Lloyd, and welcome to our YouTube Live with Dr. Jordan Rubin. Jordan has been a good friend of mine for over 20 years, and I love Jordan. And let me tell you why I love him. Well, there's lots of reasons. I'm not going to list them all, but his wife is one of the sweetest, most wonderful woman I've ever met in my life. And for some reason, she seems to be crazy about you, Jordan. I don't understand that. I haven't figured it out yet, but she is. And it said, I'm just kidding. And that says a ton about you. One of the other ones is your children. Will you share how many children you have and how many of them are adopted?
Sure. First of all, Alex, I want to know when you said you're kidding that my wife's crazy about me, or you can't understand why. So I think the
I'm
audience is
kidding, but
wondering.
I can't
Yes,
understand why. Yeah.
yes. I have six children, five adopted, and we have a good shared memory that when we were meeting our first adopted child, now our order of kids is unique, but our first adopted child is 18, but he happens to be our fourth in terms of age, but he was the first adopted child. And 18 years ago, actually a little longer than that, we came and stayed with you and Hope and had a chance to visit Samuel right when he was born, a couple of days old. And we gave him the I'm the little brother, and Joshua had the I'm the big brother shirt. So, yeah, so Samuel is 18 now. Time flies. And I have five adopted kids, one biological, ages 12 to 27, three boys, three girls, and we're in a good season. Everybody next month, everyone will be a teenager or a 20 something. So lots of opinions and lots of life navigations. And you know the drill, Alex. Late night, stayed up last night talking to Joshua, who's our 21-year-old son, about life, football, school, business, and you kind of walk away from those discussions praying that some of it would sink in, right? We've all been there.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is, I know with me and my children, you're hoping that some of it will sink in. And now my children are 25 and 32, and you realize some of it really did sink in, and that's very cool. Jordan is the author of the huge best-selling book, The Maker's Diet. That was probably the first time I'd ever heard of you, Jordan. When I got that book, not knowing you in any way, just got the book because I believed in it. And wonderful book, bestseller. But I think this book may be better. I think about 3 months ago, Jordan, you were sitting in my den here in Franklin, Tennessee. You live about a mile down the road. And you started telling me about some things that had happened with you and your wife and God, and that had led you to, I believe, some of the information, especially the intervention, or at least one of them, in this book. And it was my 32-year-old son, my wife, and I that were with you in that conversation, and we were just sitting there with our mouths open, just with what you were sharing, because it was so convicting to me. And it was one of those things. They say the greatest truths in the world are typically the simplest ones. And one of the questions I'm going to ask you in a minute, or ask you to talk about, is this maybe secret to all health that was hiding in plain sight. And you made that available to my family and I, and we have been doing it every day since the day you were sat in our house. And it's made a big difference for us, and we're still doing it every day, and we have no intention of stopping. And one of the things I told you is I'm so excited about telling my people about this, because it is what you're talking about, something that's biblically based, natural health, and potentially a huge breakthrough. That's exactly who we are and what we've been trying to do for 25 years now. So Jordan has degrees and training in naturopathic medicine and nutrition and other things. I don't know all of them, Jordan, but to me, your biggest credential is that you are truly a man of God, and you try to live your life that way. You try to run your businesses that way. Jordan is the founder and creator of Garden of Life, sold it a number of years ago for a ridiculous amount of money. And then he and Josh Axe were president and CEO of Ancient Nutrition as well, one of the top nutritional companies in the world today. And this, I believe, is your newest project. Is that correct?
Yes, and it depends on what this is, but the Biblio Diet and then the message we're going to talk
That's right.
about, which I call Healing Leaves, is something that really I'm a megaphone for God, because it's hard to discover something in the Bible, Alex, and it's almost impossible to me to read the same book over and over again and still get new revelation, but yet it happens. So I don't know that this is the latest thing, but I do believe it's something that I will look back on and uh, feel like is my legacy. And it's pretty interesting. I did an interview yesterday, Alex, with an Orthodox Jewish man who was, this was a online magazine that is very secular to say the least, but it was a great interview because I felt really good about unpacking these biblical truths. And it really was amazing talking to someone about information that they had been studying much of their entire life, with uh, a powerful relational message that involves the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and of course, the revelation of Jesus. Because what I share in the Biblio Diet is really a 66 book message of what God intends for our health. And even though in 2003, I wrote the Maker's Diet, and I've written biblical health books since, there's fresh revelation in the Biblio Diet. And what's even more amazing, since the book's been written and it hasn't even launched yet, the book will come out in a matter of days. I received more revelation just last week, and I just don't get it. It's almost like you open a bunch of presents on Christmas Day, and you think you got everything out from under the tree, and yet there's another present and there's another present that you just didn't see. So, in a way, this idea of God's revelation being hidden in plain sight for such a time as this is it's hard to understand why, but it's powerful when you can share it. So the Biblio Diet is really a message that I'm repeating from the Creator. And because it has been hidden for so long, I believe that perhaps someone who's watching or listening even today is going to have their life completely transformed by what we share. And that's really exciting. And no matter where you live on the planet, we have a great opportunity for you to connect to this message. We'll give you a nice free gift if you're interested. And I really believe this is going to bless you, whether you call on the name of the Lord or not. This message is for you. And I believe the inspiration to share this is nothing short of a word from God.
Yeah, I do too, Jordan. So I don't know if you made this word up or if it already existed, but I think it's the first time I've ever heard it. Bibliotarian diet. What is that? And whatever you'd like to say about that. And then you've already brought it up. Of course, this is the thing I'm most excited about today. Um, After that, could you go into what in the heck are healing leaves?
Absolutely. Well, let me start by saying that years ago, a friend of mine who was a very well known pastor was writing a health book and a fitness book. And I was asked to write the foreword. And when I read the book, this pastor was talking about the paleo diet, which has been a very popular way of eating. People have called it the caveman diet. It's based on hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution when we came from Cro-Magnon man and apes and all of that. And I said, with all due respect, because I, like many of your readers, including you, I believe, uh,
Yeah,
we come from a worldview where man was created thousands of years ago, Adam and Eve, not hundreds of thousands. And I said, rather than discussing a paleo diet, which isn't a bad way of eating, by the way, but the message itself is steeped in evolutionary history and things that we may not or don't believe in. I said, I would love to see people out there saying they're on a biblio diet, which was a little bit of a rhyme. But the reason being is biblio doesn't mean Bible. Biblio means the book. And the Bible isn't what David called the scriptures. It's not
right.
what Paul called the scriptures.
Yeah,
The Bible was called that because it was the good book or the book. So essentially, if you're following the Biblio Diet, you are eating by the book. And whatever you think the book is to you, because some people say the book just means fact. To me, the book's the Bible, and it has absolute hidden treasures for you. And what's great about these hidden treasures is they often fly in the face of conventional wisdom. That goes for marriage, that goes for finance, that goes for raising children, and it certainly goes for health. And I'm going to share one quick revelation, Alex, and then I'll get into healing leaves. This is something I can't believe I never shared before, but I was walking on our farm in Tennessee because not only do we teach about nutrition, not only do we formulate and et cetera, but farming is critical to God's plan for redemption of this planet. If you understand farming, you understand much more of the Bible. So I started to get into regenerative farming or regenerative agriculture in 2008, and I've never been the same. I was on my farm and I was talking to our farm director, Todd, and I said, boy, Todd, wouldn't it be great if we knew from God what to eat every day? Not just what foods are good and bad, but what to eat every day. And then it dawned on me, wait a minute. Solomon referenced his daily diet in the Bible.
yeah,
And I went back, of course, we can look at everything online. In First Kings chapter 4, starting in verse 22, it says Solomon's daily diet or daily provisions. And Alex, I call this the wisest meal on earth because Solomon was known as the wisest, the wealthiest, and the most sought after man or king on earth. In fact, the Bible says that kings from all over the earth visited Solomon and sat at his feet. He knew everything about science. He knew everything about animals and people. He was given so many gifts from around the world that he didn't have enough room to store it. And he was so wealthy, Alex, that gold and silver were considered, just the norm. They almost were devalued because there was so much of it. So what did it say he ate every day? You're going to love this. Grass-fed meat, stall-fed meat, which that chaps the boots of some of the grass-fed community, which I am. Roebuck and deer, so for you hunters, choice fowl, which would have been pheasant, duck, turkey, chicken, and meal and flour. So get this, King Solomon and his inner court every day, having all the money and all the knowledge available in the world. God said himself that Solomon had a wise and discerning heart. So he chose to eat red meat and bread. And almost every diet today says bread's bad or meat's bad or they're both bad. Nobody says they're both good until now because the Bible said it first. Now, Alex, throughout the Biblio Diet, I don't just say red meat's good, and I don't just say bread's good and dairy's good and salt's good. I give you the types and the preparation methods for the meat and for the bread and for the dairy and for the salt and for the honey, because you need to eat what God created for food and eat food in a form that's healthy for the body. So that's just a little teaser. We'll give you the top foods to eat, the top foods to avoid, how to create a biblical medicine cabinet, how to move and exercise God's way, and even how to use mindset as medicine, which obviously, Alex, is your forte, because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And death and life is in the power of the tongue. So this is also important. And that was part of my multi-hour conversation with my son, Alex, who's come to a point of frustration being a student athlete and trying to start a business. And at age 21, I tried to explain to him that, like John Maxwell says, your attitude determines your altitude. And I think that's a great message. So Alex, I think when people read the Biblio Diet, in many ways, you will be set free from dietary dogmas. And if you believe that the Bible is the Word of God, you should listen to God's principles. And even if you don't, there is so much logic, common sense, and relevant science-backed information. You will love how this can empower you and your family to be healthy. So before I get into healing leaves, I do want to say something, Alex, because I've known you for a very long time. And I have probably recommended some things over the years, but I will say that out of everything we've talked about, healing leaves is what you've been most interested in. In terms of something I've introduced. The reason I know that is because right now, healing leaves isn't available commercially. I teach people how to find it, how to grow it, how to forage for it. But people who use it typically ask me, and I'm making up batches at my house. So I know how much Alex is using because I'm making up his batches
you're
and
my
sending it in
source.
unmarked bags with, Ziplocs and all that good stuff. And to your point, we live pretty close, which is amazing in and of itself. And we don't see each other enough. But I do drive by your home when I'm in Tennessee and pray for you when I see it from the road. So that's a pretty cool thing. So Alex, I could start the healing leaves story dating back to really 2008, because that's when I was diagnosed with cancer and told that if I didn't follow conventional treatments of chemotherapy, surgery, more chemotherapy, possibly radiation, that I had a 100% chance of dying in 90 days. And you know this because I made the decision, even though this was kind of pre-social media, but I was an author and I had a company and I had, I guess, a following. I made the decision not to go public with my journey. I just felt it wasn't the time. And I didn't want to document everything for the world to see for whatever reason. But you were one of the probably 40 people that I told because I asked you to help me deal with the emotional issues that may have contributed to this diagnosis, including a way to help forgive those that hurt me. And consequently, how could I ask for forgiveness from God for those that I hurt? So you were right there and were aware when God healed me miraculously, even though those of us who were involved just felt assured it was going to happen. It was just a really powerful bit of faith that God gave us. But one thing that came out of that, Alex, was my insatiable desire to help people overcome cancer, or
Yeah.
better yet, avoid it. However, not everybody out there could quit working. I turned the running of my company at Garden of Life at the time over to my team. Not everybody could trust themselves and their close friends who were authors and health experts to build a plan that took 12 to 14 hours a day. And in some cases, the food was expensive, et cetera, et cetera. And so I left that experience excited to help people, but knowing that there wasn't a universal answer, an inexpensive, affordable answer around the world that could be offered. I would say the most universal would be the forgiveness, emotional, and mental health component, and then the healing prayer for cancer that I would say out loud every day. But the food, the sauna, the lymphatic therapy, all the things that I did were not available to the majority of the people. And so I kept my story under wraps, as they say, only sharing it when God led me to share it, not really in the mass public, even though now it's been 17 years since I'm cancer free, which would have been July of 2008, just 90 days after I was diagnosed. So instead of
Yeah.
being dead in 90 days, I was healed in 90 days. So that's pretty amazing. So, Alex, I've been praying for years that God would give me wisdom to help people heal. And in 2018, my wife said to me, Jordan, I had a God idea, and it was in the form of a question that I was asking God. This is my wife, Nikki, talking, and she's describing it. And she said, I asked God, is Jordan going to discover the cure for cancer and win a Nobel Prize?
Right.
And Alex, I know how this sounds. I
Yeah.
know what people must be thinking. I'm repeating it verbatim because I want you to understand the story and where this came from, not because I go around saying I'm Nobel Prize worthy. In fact, I haven't found even an application process yet for the Nobel Prize. Still wondering where that is. So,
Okay.
my wife told me this in December of 2018, and I sort of filed it away, even though my initial reaction was almost frustration because uh, I thought a cure for cancer, if it's a medicine, is unavailable to 99% of the world because they're not insured. They don't
Yeah.
have access to hospitals. And if it's an Amazonian herb in one rare part of Peru, there's going to be a limited supply and only certain people can get it. Therefore, I don't know what to look for, and as if I haven't already been praying for decades.
Yeah.
However, I filed it away in my mind. And in April of 2019, as I was listening to my Bible app, I heard in Ezekiel 47, verse 12, which I had heard and read hundreds of times,
Yeah.
a scripture that spoke to me like the loudest sonic boom. And let me frame the scene. So, Ezekiel the prophet talking about the future, and he's talking about a sanctuary where water flows from it to form a river. And on both sides of the river are trees. Their fruit bears every month, it's always in season, and the leaves never wither or fail. The fruit will be for food, and the leaves for healing. Now,
Yeah.
Alex, herbalists the world over have used this scripture, whether faith based or not, to talk about the benefits of plants. And then they would say, that's why you should eat spinach or barley green.
Yeah.
However, because I'm a farmer And because I know the difference between an annual plant and a perennial plant, like a tree or a bush or a shrub, I knew this wasn't leaves like spices or herbs. These were fruit tree leaves God was talking about. And this is not a short story, but as I continue, I wanted to understand the biblical definition for healing. If the leaves are for healing, could that word be translated into something else? Well, it turns out the word terupa or terufa means healing, cure, or medicine. And the word tree means a perennial plant that bears fruit every year. And fruit is any part that's edible that contains a seed. And so these definitions are important because I began to study what are trees, which are most beneficial, and are they simply oranges, apples, and bananas? What about nuts? What about seeds or fruits that we don't have in grocery stores? What are in these leaves that could be beneficial? And I started calling farms and orchards, asking if I could buy leaves. And you can imagine the mango grove in Florida when I asked, and them saying, "What do you mean? We throw those away or they're composted." I said, "No, can you just sell them to me? What price? Just, I'll pay what you think is fair. Just send me some." So I get these FedEx envelopes and get leaves and a little bit of paper towels in the middle. And then I kept listening to the Bible sequentially. And in Revelation 22:2,
Yeah.
God talks about the tree of life. This is the last book and the last chapter of the Bible. And the Apostle John gave the revelation of Jesus, and it said, on the banks of the river, very similar story to Ezekiel, is the tree of life, which, by the way, was the tree that Adam and Eve ate from to live forever until they sinned. And God said, "You will no longer be able to reach out and partake from the tree of life." So it was guarded by fiery cherubim or seraphim. I get confused because one looks, like a little fat baby, a cherub in all the art, and the other one, seraphim, are carry flaming torches. Anyway, they couldn't get access to it. So the tree of life, which bears 12 kinds of fruit, the leaves are for the healing of the nations. And there I realized
Wow.
this isn't just a blend of leaves, but it should be 12 leaves and it should be made like a tea. I was praying and asking God. I started to consume it in 2019. And because I take God at his word, I started planting fruit trees on our farms to the tune of now over 600,000, which
Oh,
is,
wow.
I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
And now you're going to say, "Jordan, can I have double the bags of leaves now that I know how many fruit trees you have?"
Just send me
Uh,
in garbage bags.
Not only that, Alex, you all can come cut your own leaves because, and I don't mean that in a bad way. We have opened up our farm to anyone who hears this message that wants to come and bring a little baggie. And I'm not going to give you my address on this program, but if you're in the area, look me up. So
I'll
I
do it.
started drinking it, Alex, and then God would bring me people who had cancer that sought my help. And I tell this story in chapter 14 of the Biblio Diet, which again, we're going to offer free to everyone listening or watching. I met a young man with terminal cancer. I felt led to share the message with him. He was in the Netherlands and I met him in Kenya. Very amazing story. And God healed him from late stage metastatic bone cancer, which when I saw him, he was 6'2", 110 pounds, dying. And now he's over 200 pounds and 6'4". Amazing story. And that
Wow.
it didn't stop there. There's a mutual friend and I would say beyond a friend, more like a mentor, Papa Don Finto of ours. And when I shared
Oh,
this
yeah.
message with Don, I remember him saying, "Jordan, I've read the Bible for," he's 95, so
Yeah.
for 80 some years, and I know that what you're saying is true. I've never thought of it this way, but this is what you think it is and what God told you it is, which is so cool.
Well, we
So
worshiped at Don's church for 6 years. He was our preacher at our church for 6 years. And then I've
now
known,
you're just bragging, Alex.
I
No,
guess
he's He's so
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
he's incredible.
You're the first person who mentioned his name to me so many years ago, back when you were attending the church. That's how I remembered it when we ended up meeting, uh, call it 8, 9 years ago, which has been
Yeah,
amazing. And so I have been sharing this message discreetly with people who would come into my life while I'm planting trees until now, when in the Biblio Diet, I introduce what I would consider traditional biblical medicine, not traditional Chinese medicine, not Ayurvedic medicine, and those are great.
yeah.
Traditional biblical medicine, and best of all, fruit tree leaves have four unique benefits. They're anti-inflammatory, they're antimicrobial, that's fungi, viruses, parasites, and bacteria. They lower elevated blood sugar, and they are immune boosting. So, pretty much everything you need for what would be a medicine or a cure. And everywhere you are in the world, the poorest to the richest has access to these. In fact, Alex, your background, if that's a coconut palm, there are leaves right there that are for healing. So whether you live in the tropics, whether you live in the Midwest, whether you live in the South like we do, there are leaves on the side of the road, in forests, in botanical gardens, and maybe in your backyard that, when consumed in a tea, in some cases a salad, can unlock the healing potential that God placed in each and every one of us. And what was great about that interview I did, Alex, with the Orthodox Jewish man yesterday for a magazine that was not faith based, he said, Jordan, what is your dream? What is the most important thing you could do on this planet? I can't believe he asked me that last. It was so great. And I said, his name was Yitzi, which is short for Yitzhak or Isaac in Hebrew.
Oh,
His,
yeah.
his name was actually Avram Yitzhak, Abraham Isaac, which is so cool. So I said to him, if I could help bring the awareness and inspiration for people to consume fruit tree leaves in the morning as their tea, in the afternoon as their sort of refreshment, but everyone who consumed it knew that it came right from the Bible, then I will be fulfilled. Obviously, I believe people will be healed and their health improved as a result, but I see that as a legacy of illuminating the healing that God brought us. And while we live in a day where natural health is finally becoming pop culture, and even this governmental administration is favorable to what we believe, healing isn't coming from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Healing is not coming from Dr. Oz. Healing is not coming from the medical or nutritional influencers. This is God's idea. I don't know why he revealed it to me. I'm grateful. I'm sure he's revealed it to others. And I want people to understand that the healing that we are praying for, begging for, and believing for has been right there all along. And it is accessible to everyone, even if they don't have my cell phone number like you do for me to send you care packages. So that's it, Alex. And we're at the beginning of a wave of healing as the Biblio Diet hasn't even launched. We've just started sharing this message on interviews like this, and I am so excited to see what God does with this message at this time.
You know, my father was a preacher in Protestant church for over 20 years. My undergraduate degree was in ministry. I did full-time ministry for 10 years out of undergraduate before I went back to graduate school. I've been an ordained minister for over 30 years. And I don't know how many times I've read those passages, and it never clicked for me either. And when you were in our house 3 months ago telling us about this, one of the things was just, how did I miss this? How did I, how did, but ever since I've been talking to people about Jesus, one thing I've said that's just sort of observations working with clients and myself, my own life, is that it's amazing to me that it seems like so many times God will always 100% be faithful to his promises, But very often it seems like the way he chooses to do that is the last way you would ever imagine. It reminds me of Jesus saying, I came for the lowly. I came for the poor. I came for the downtrodden. I didn't come for the famous people and the rich people. And I mean, of course, they're welcome too, but a lot of them won't come because they're in pride and love of money and things like that. And all of the apostles pretty much were the lowest of the low, kind of in their culture of that day. And the healing leaves, as you just said, when you called the guy asking, "Can I get some of your leaves?" and he's like, "What? We throw them away." I mean, they're on the ditch in the side of the road. This is not something that, as a society, until now at least, we have valued. It's been, well, how do we get rid of all these leaves? We'll keep and eat the fruit, but how do we get rid of all these leaves? And it's just amazing. And as I said, we've done the tea every day since the day you were in our house. And my son Harry, who's 32, had chronic sore throats for a long period of time. In 3 days on the tea, they were gone and they've never come back. And the younger generation these days, 32, he was blown away. And you told me that this had not happened with anyone else, which makes sense totally for me. That's the story of my life. Uh, a lot of times in a negative way, but this time in a positive way. I started doing the tea and I started detoxing, which is a wonderful thing. Gets out all the impurities, toxins out of your body, stuff like that. And people pay big money for effective detoxes. And maybe I'm the only one, but uh, I detoxed for like a month. And and the weird thing about that, Jordan, is I've done 500 detoxes. I mean, I wouldn't have thought I would have had enough stuff to detox for a month. So it seemed to be getting deeper and more to the core of my body than anything else had, because I've done detoxes left and right for 35 years. And typically, if I do a detox now, not much happens. But with the leaves, I was heavy detoxing for a month, and I feel great. But I felt great anyway, to be fair. But and none of us have cancer, so we can't gauge that. But to me, and I know it's true to you too, Jordan, I love you. I know you're brilliant. If you tell me something, um, I believe it. But if God tells me something, I know it. And when you pointed out those passages, one in the Old Testament, one in the New, and that's an amazing thing to me, Jordan, because almost all of kind of the connect the dots, kind of secret truths of Scripture in Judaic law, you had to have two witnesses in order for something to be considered um, credible evidence that could be presented to a judge. And almost all of those cryptic, connect the dots, secret teachings of Scripture, and there's a whole bunch of them, there's two. There'll be at least two references by different people, witnesses, and very often at least one in the old and one in the new. And that's exactly what this is. One in the old, Ezekiel, one in the new, two different people, thousands of years apart, didn't know each other remotely, and they say the exact same thing almost. I mean, it is the same thing. I think that God allowed them to put it in their own words. But um, I believe this is huge. I've wondered a million times since you and I met and talked about this, why not before? And because I mean, people pour over the Bible constantly, both loving it and some to attack it. And lately, AI has started pouring all over the Bible, and which some of that is good, some of it's not so good. But I do AI all the time when I study scripture just to help me find stuff and connect dots. And AI didn't even connect this. It's crazy, but I believe God revealed it to you at this time for some reason. And I'm not, I mean, I believe you're a great man, and that may be the only reason. I don't think it is. I think there's other reasons. But for whatever reason, God waited till now and you. And and that's cool to me because you're my friend, and I love you. So I've been honored, to get leads from you and all that. And by the way, everybody, the tea, I mean, I don't put sweetener in it, but it tastes good to me. It's not a bad tasting tea. Some teas, if you don't sweeten them, they taste bad. This does not taste bad. Now, obviously, it doesn't have, half a cup of sugar in it, but it tastes good to me. It's easy to make. I just made some this morning. I made a new batch this morning, Jordan. Took me 30 minutes to make 5 gallons. And then we'll drink on that 5 gallons for the next several weeks, probably. But anyway, so talk a little bit about like the digestive tract, gut health, gut issues. Do you see that is huge these days? And so many people have that. And probiotics and prebiotics have been huge for years now. You've been involved with that, way more than I do. But is this applicable, do you think, to gut digestive issues?
It's a great question, Alex. And I have studied 70 different health conditions that healing leaves should be able to help. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. If you have something that contains polyphenols, which are now becoming these powerful molecules that boost the cell's mitochondria, they're now known as some of the best prebiotics, and they're great for the brain, you name it. There's flavonoids and flavanols. Each leaf contains 60 to 300 different compounds that have been discovered. And here's the best question: how many have yet to be discovered? Because this isn't an isolated chemical. This is a bevy of compounds that God put together. And here's what's great about these leaves: they contain all the benefits of fruits with none of the sugar, and perfectly captures the power of the sun to transfer to us as humans. Now, Alex, we've talked
Can
about
I
this
interrupt you
before.
just 1 second? You just but and I apologize, everybody. I hate to interrupt people, but my Jordan just brought up the mitochondria, and I have heard and I've asked after I heard this 30 years ago that as the mitochondria goes, the cell goes, and as the cell goes, your body goes, and as your body goes, your health goes. But in one, looking at it from one angle, in one sense, you can boil that down to the mitochondria of the cell.
Yes, and it is the battery or the power charger of the
Yeah.
cell. And if you listen and research modern science, certain polyphenols, I'll give one example. It's called ellagic acid or ellagitannins that you find in almost every fruit tree leaf. When that comes into contact with your microbiome, it creates something called urolithin or urolithin A, which is known as the longevity molecule. So think about this, Alex. The tree of life is what God gave to Adam and Eve to live forever. The
Yeah.
tree of life is what Ezekiel saw on the side of the river, and it's what the Apostle John the Revelator saw on the side of the river. And when you consume healing leaves, you are partaking in the tree of life, because even though, and this is going to be a theological deep message, even though Adam and Eve were taken out of the garden and restricted from eating of the tree of life, when Jesus came, he became the second Adam and he
Yeah.
broke that curse. So I
Yeah.
believe as we sit here, we have access to the tree of life. Now, I can't tell you how many years you're going to live as a result. But what I can tell you is every time I've taken God at his word, I have been glad and never regretted it. I believe that God honors people who believe his word is true. And what you said, Alex, is amazing. You believe me, but you know God, right?
Yeah.
There's a, and so when something comes from me, you believe it. When something comes from God, you know it. And the word know is a pretty important word in the Bible. It's used for a few different things. It means kind of extreme intimacy and belief, right?
Yeah, and another thing about that, as you know, Revelation is the only book in the Bible that says you will be blessed just for reading this. And and the fact that it's in the last chapter, almost like, okay, this is my farewell message. This is my conclusion sort of thing. And that's where he says it again about this tree of life with the healing leaves.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I want to make sure, because we teased this, that everyone
Yes.
who's watching and listening knows what they can do to get this information. And I
Right.
do want to tell you that in the future, we are going to be offering healing leaves from our farm, just like we do for Alex and Hope and Harry. But as of now, I'm going to teach you how to find it, how to buy it, how to forage for it. You can even go in your backyard or in a forest with a little herb or plant finder, and any leaf that comes from a fruit bearing tree, and we'll give you a list of those, is beneficial. So if you will visit thebibliodiet.com, you can click on the free healing leaves chapter. That's chapter 14 of the book. I would love for you to have it. You can share it. It is for the world. If you want to order the book, you can do that as well. There's lots of great info besides chapter 14. But for everyone listening that has a friend, a loved one, or maybe they themselves are battling a health challenge, could be cancer, could be an infection, could be diabetes, could be a brain issue, or you may want to lose some weight if you are metabolically unhealthy. I believe that healing leaves will go a long way in transforming your health. And best of all, you are honoring God's word by following it. And every time I drink healing leaves, Alex, I'm just about 32 ounces in for my usual today, and I have a little bit left. So I'm going to have that when I'm done here. Whenever I drink it, I say, your leaves are for my healing. Now, I'm
Mm.
not saying green tea isn't good, or matcha, or this, or, yerba mate, or coffee, but none of those are referred by God as healing, cure, or a treatment for a disease,
Right.
or medicine. This
Yeah.
is something that's next level. And I just am so excited to see what's going to happen. As I mentioned to you earlier, the book's not even out yet. It's coming out in a few days. If you go on the bibliodiet.com, you can pre-order it. There's an audiobook, but you can get the Healing Leaves chapter right now for free. I want everyone to have it. I want everyone to share it, because it is God's answer for cancer and more.
And does that have the recipe in it, Jordan?
Yes, it does. Yep. It'll tell you the different leaves that are beneficial, which there's so many leaves, every fruit bearing tree, including, folks, walnut and oak. Yes, you might think, well, what kind of a fruit does an oak have? It has an acorn that's a fruit, believe it or not, according to the definition. And everybody's got oaks out there. Now, I know some of you have trees that are sprayed and have all the chemicals. You can find an oak tree somewhere and make some healing leaves from that. And it tastes just as good as black tea without caffeine. Everybody can do it. And again, Alex, if somebody were to take and download like an herb finder or plant finder app, you'll be able to know when you're in the little woods, hey, this is a pawpaw, this is a persimmon, this is an eastern hackberry, this is an aronia berry. There's fruit bearing trees everywhere. When we're on 65, Alex, on the right and left of it, depending on where we are, there's healing leaves. In fact, I have become the ultimate tree hugger because every time I'm seeing green leaves on trees, I'm just in awe that God made medicine for everyone in every corner of the earth. And he made it, to your point earlier, look like the weak things of the world, the despised things of the world. What other people call trash, God calls treasure. And that goes for people, that goes for places, and that goes for things, particularly fruit tree leaves. There's more fruit tree leaves on the planet, Alex, more than enough for every human being to drink healing leaves every day. And that makes me so excited.
And the recipe that Hope and I've been using to take it from leaves to tea is in chapter 14. Really
Yes,
quick, Jordan, we've got just 2 or 3 minutes left. Probably a third of my list or people that follow me either have autoimmune or they've got a close family because autoimmune is skyrocketing. Um, this benefits autoimmune, you believe, correct?
absolutely. I don't believe I know. And again, healing leaves is not really been researched as well as some herbs and spices because it's been hidden in plain sight. But we know that the polyphenols, the flavonoids, and other compounds in healing leaves are anti-inflammatory,
Right.
and they are also antioxidant, and they also lower insulin levels. All of these so co-infections, which almost every autoimmune diagnosed individual is suffering from. So healing leaves should be a foundation, whether you have a weak immune system, an overactive immune system. And in fact, Alex, fruit tree leaves are anti-parasitic and having a similar effect to an ivermectin or a fenbendazole or a mebendazole. So think about how amazing this would have been in the last 5 years if mankind would have been able to partake in it. So the next plague that comes around, you will be plague proof when you are consuming God's healing leaves.
Okay. Well, everybody, just if you care about my 2 cents, Hope and I've talked about this, and Harry agrees too. Uh, our plan is to do this daily for the rest of our lives. Period.
Wow.
If God does it, if God says it, I know it's true. And so I just thank God, Jordan, that God did choose you and chose you for such a time as this because he chose a man who has a heart for him and Jesus and has, as long as I've known you, and that's been the passion of your life. I know you've made a whole bunch of money and done a lot of public, things that people think are great, but that's why I think you're great, not for the money you've made or whatever. And and with you, I've known so many people over the years that even talked about scripture, but then when you looked at their life, they weren't living it. And you have always lived it. You and Nikki have always lived it. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I can't recommend more highly. Please get that book, read chapter 14, go get your leaves. I believe in September, I'm going to be back with Jordan with this when they've got the leaves available that you can get directly from him that are organic, that they grow on their farm, that don't have the pesticides and herbicides and all. But there's some sources that he gives you that you can get them now. The recipe is in there of how to make the tea. hoping I started the next day. It may take you a week or so, but you can start soon. And uh, Jordan, I'm just so excited about this. Not for you. I am excited for you, but I'm excited for the world. I mean, I don't care if you win the Nobel Prize or not. I hope you do because it'll bring notoriety to this. But I love it that this is something as you started that's accessible to everyone, even if you don't have any money. This is accessible to you because this is what the world has considered basically trash um, up until now, except for
Yep.
like composting and stuff.
Yes,
So
and Alex, I will say this: I do want people to learn how to forage for their own leaves, grow their own leaves. Maybe they're already in their
yeah,
backyard because I see all over wherever I am, there's people's yards having these wonderful trees. But even when we do offer healing leaves in tea bags or in loose leaf or whatever, we are always going to provide it to people no matter what they can afford or can't afford. This is too important
yeah,
to be strictly commercialized, and I hope that the whole world consumes this, and it's going to make me go to sleep at night knowing that I took God at His word and
yeah,
I shared, or rather amplified, the truth that was already there. And I'm grateful, Alex, for you trusting me, but more importantly, trusting God. And I look forward to hearing the amazing testimonies from your audience who dare to believe that God is true in faith and in action.
yeah. I do too. So God bless you, Jordan. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're super busy with this launch, and but you are going to come back in
I
September.
am coming back. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So give Nikki a hug. God bless, and thank you, everybody. Get chapter 14. Give them that website one more time,
Yep.
Jordan.
Visit thebibliodiet.com. That's thebibliodiet.com. Click on chapter 14 and enjoy the most amazing God given beverage in history.
All right. God bless you, everyone. Thank you, Jordan.